Let's work together to inspire communities of song that sing together for the joy of doing it and to the glory of God. The organist as orchestrator. One of the great things about being an organist is that we get to decide what sounds we will use. Any one of the keys on our keyboards, whether they're for our hands or for our feet, can be any number of things depending on what stop or combination of stops we decide to use. And with that wide variety of sound, we have a unique ability to capture the imaginations of people who are listening to us or our congregations who are singing with us. We can take them to different times and places if we are very inventive in the way we use the orchestrations that we design. One of the things that I do when I'm getting acquainted or reacquainted with an instrument is I listen to each separate stop from bottom to top. It's kind of a spiritual experience for me. It's kind of a discipline to do this. So I'll start with, for instance, the 8-foot principle on this instrument, and I'll play it from bottom to top. For me, it's like getting to know a new person. Where do they sing the best? What are spots where they would be helped by a partner? Where is their voice the strongest? Where is it the weakest? Where could they become the leader? And where should they be the follower? And I will do that for every stop on the instrument. In this case, it's well over 70 of them. And I do it regularly here, even though I'm very familiar with this instrument. So for instance, I'll take the 4-foot flute and do the same thing. And hear how that differs from the stop that I just heard. I encourage you to do that too. Get to know your instrument like they're a new person, and then let your orchestrator mind run free. Where could you use those sounds? Where would they capture somebody's imagination? Where would they not be appropriate for use? What combination of sounds could I use to come up with something different or something unique or something wonderful? On every organ, there is a sound that is associated only with organs. It's called the principal sound. On this organ, it's labeled montre. The numbers, as you know, correspond with the length in feet of the longest pipe of that sound, or that rank. For hymn playing, most of the time, you're going to want to use that 8-foot principal sound as the basis. But very seldom are you going to want to leave it there, because it plays at the pitch that the congregation will be singing, and when they're singing, it will support them, but it won't lead them very well. So normally you'll add a 4-foot pitch of the same kind of sound. So a 4-foot principal, sometimes it's called an octave, in this case it's called a prestant. And it means for every note you play, 2 pitches actually sound, the note itself and an octave higher. For larger hymns, or to lead a large congregation well, you can add a 2-foot pitch. You can also add even higher pitches. In this case, it's called a fourniture. Some places it's called mixtures. And those are one draw knob that engages anywhere from 2 to 9 or more ranks of sounds. A mixture is an example of something that you would never use by itself because it's high pitches that are designed to crown this set. So you're not going to use mixtures by themselves. There are some other things that you should not use by themselves. If you have something called a 2 2/3, in this case it's called a nasard, it's something that's called a mutation, and it doesn't play at the pitch that you're playing. So let's give an example. Here's a flute playing middle C. Here's the nasard playing that same note on the keyboard. As you can hear, it sounds an octave and a fifth higher. So when are we going to use that sound? We're going to use it in combination with something that doesn't have a fraction on it. So in this case, let's add it to our 8-foot flute. You're hearing two pitches. But after a while, your ear doesn't discern the two pitches, it just discerns a different sound quality. Some organs have 1 3/5, 1 1/3. In this case, I've got an 8/9 and a 1 1/7. All of those can be used in combination with sounds that don't have fractions. And there are lots of reasons why those sounds work the way they do. There isn't enough time in this short video to explain it, but do experiment with these mutations, these stops labeled with fractions, because they can give you lots of options for color, but don't use them alone. Something else that you should not use alone is anything marked celeste. So here is a voix celeste. A celeste is always designed to go with something that has a similar label. In this case, the viol de gambe, or string. So I've got an 8-foot string. If I play it by itself, if I pull on the celeste, it sounds a bit richer or stringier. That is what the celeste is designed to do. So don't use celestes by themselves. So when you're setting up a hymn, you're going to start with the principal 8, in this case labeled montre. You're going to add at least a 4, perhaps a 2. Let's say that your hymn is quieter. You could do that same thing with flutes. Start with an 8-foot flute and then use your 4 so that it will lead the congregation well. You could also play a hymn with strings. So you would start with your viol de gambe and you could add your celeste, but then add something on top. Add perhaps a 4-foot flute to help lead the congregation. On a much smaller instrument like this one, you'll have fewer options, but the same principles apply. Here we have an 8-foot sound that's labeled gedeckt, and then a 4-foot sound labeled principal. And these are voiced to work well together. So the 8-foot is what the congregation would sing, the pitch that they would sing at. The 4-foot will help lead them better. There is a 2-foot on this instrument labeled blockflöte, and there's a mixture on this instrument for the highest pitches. Again, you would never use the mixture by itself. You might use the 2-foot by itself in perhaps a solo capacity, but you probably would not use it in leading congregational song. You might use the 4-foot by itself in a solo capacity, but probably not, again, when leading a congregation. It's best to have the pitch that they're singing as the foundational stop, and then add from there. On this organ, on the main division, the great, I have an 8-foot principle, the basis of organ sound and what I'd begin with in accompanying hymns or leading hymns. I would add a 4-foot to that for clarity, for leadership, add a 2-foot to that, and perhaps a mixture, and perhaps a higher mixture. On the choir division, a secondary division, I still have an 8-foot, here it's called viola pomposa, for 2 and mixture, and so on every division. Now the guidance that I've given you is quite general, just a guideline to get you started if you're new to the art of registration or orchestration at the organ. So start with those general rules, but then don't be afraid to experiment. Get to know your instrument. And for those of us who know our resident instruments very, very well, take time to become reacquainted. Listen to every stop from bottom to top of the keyboard. Listen to various combinations of stops. See if you can find some new combinations that you've not tried before. It's a grand adventure that we are taking our congregations on if we think about the variety of sounds that we can offer them when we consider organist as orchestrator.